Well, hi everybody, and welcome to the second ever Brewster Trade Analysis podcast. Welcome back if you saw the first show, or if you're listening to this for the first time. Hopefully, I don't annoy you so much that you decide never to pay attention to it again. Today, we'll be looking at the trades dated, if you want to follow along in the completed trades section of the forums, but the trades dated from January 10th through January 19th. There won't be, last time we had a rapid fire segment, that won't be there this time, because I'm just going to go through them in order. And this time I will be hosting this solo, although I'm hoping to have 2 or 3 more upcoming podcasts over the next week. Tyler will be helping me out for another one as a guest host pretty soon here. And then there's one that could have some pretty interesting trades in it that I'd like to see if we could get another guest host for. And of course, Tyler's always welcome every single time, but I'll try to be harassing you guys, see if anybody else wants to come along for that one soon. I think one thing I wanted to clarify before we get too much farther is is I usually give out grades for kind of a talent and an organizational grade. The one thing about the talent that I think maybe needs a little bit of explaining is it's not a differential. It's not like they get an A, team A gets an A because they received a great player, and team B gets an F because the players they got weren't as good. Like, there's no comparison. It's just a talent grade assigned for the players that team got, not related to the players that moved to the other team. The reason we do it that way is because I don't like to look at trades from an aspect of who won. I like to look at them from a perspective of what did you get and what did it do for your team. When you start comparing the parts that moved from one team to another one, I think you can lose a lot in terms of why teams made the move and what the benefit could be. Because a lot of times you're going to lose out massively on the amount of talent in a trade, and it can still be a good trade. Also, I think last time I tried to be a little aggressive and go through too many things, and even with Tyler's help, I felt like we were kind of just running through stuff kind of fast. So I'm going to try to do a fewer number of trades overall and try to go a little bit more in depth into them. Anyway, with that kind of established, and I've already gotten all my papers out of order here, so give me a second while I reshuffle and try to figure out what the heck I'm doing. Man, how did I mess this up so badly? All right. Well, yeah, geez, give me a second here. I've somehow managed to reshuffle everything, and I just have to make sure I've got these in order so that you can follow along. So that one goes... I'll probably just edit this part out later on, or leave it in here so you can listen to me being flustered like an idiot. Okay, there we go. Got it straightened out. So the first one we'll be looking at is the Las Vegas Carolina deal, which took place in-game on June 21st, 2009. And in this deal, Recht is still searching for some bullpen help, it looks like, at this point. And he ends up picking up Ron Wilson. And in this deal, Carolina gets a few players back. They get Mario Salas, who is a 17-year-old shortstop. He's a right-handed batter with potential ratings of pretty much 5s across the board for his batting stats, although at one point it looked like he may have been a little bit higher, and I'm not sure where he was at this deal, but it looked like he had already lumped at least somewhat before Carolina picked him up. The neat thing about him is he's kind of a defensive Swiss Army knife, and he's 17 and rated really well for his defensive fundamentals, pretty much 8s and 7s across the board. And if any of those bump, he could kind of be a plus defender at every single position, which does give him some value. And he was once 6 across the board for his potentials. And some of these 17-year-olds that lump do get those back as they get into their mid-20s. And so then if you have a player who is, can play every defensive position well, and be a plus defender there, and then at least average even at things like shortstop and center field, and you're rated, 6 contact, 6 power, 6 eye, 6 avoid K, that's a decent player. So this guy has, anywhere from utility backup to quad A player to actually a starter, depending on kind of what happens with him. But he's 17, he's pretty raw, he's pretty much a dream at this point. They also got relief pitcher Tim Waller. He's a 21-year-old right-handed pitcher with kind of 8, 7, 6 ratings. He's a fastball slider combo, so he's going to have a negative lefty split more than likely. And he kind of looks like a middle reliever, essentially. He's 21 years old. He's mostly developed. He'll be kind of ready to go pretty soon here. And it's pretty much he is what you get. He doesn't have a whole lot of pro experience at this point, but he could probably plug into the middle of the bullpen and not embarrass himself too badly. Although he'll never be somebody when you rely on for high leverage outs. Ronnie Turner looks like essentially a salary dump. He was picked up by Las Vegas before the season and signed to a 2-year, $3.7 million deal, and then promptly got hurt. He's a 30-year-old left-handed pitcher. He's also a fastball slider and really doesn't pitch that well against righties. And if you look at historically, he's been used as a lefty specialist throughout his career. It looks like based on his innings pitched, and he probably can't even do that anymore that well. So he's just kind of a salary dump in this picture. And then the last player that Carolina got is another kind of really not that important guy. Second base / third base, although really he's better suited to third base where he's a good defender. Whereas second base, he has kind of limited range and a little bit of hands are a little clunky. But that's 31-year-old right-handed batting Ryan Savicki Jr., his nickname's Sushi, and it's just a weird nickname. Sushi Savicki just sounds like, I don't know, just something awful. Anyway, he's not a great batter. He's a career 73 weighted runs created or OPS plus. Actually has the same rating for both of them, depending on which one you like better. He did in 2028 and 2027 post 324 and 350 on base percentages, which were far above his career normal. So he's kind of probably riding a little bit of people thinking he's a little better than he is, especially before maybe Las Vegas picked him up recently. But he again. He's a free agent at year's end. He's making only $1.3 million. He's pretty much kind of a salary dump, looks like at this point. And so what Las Vegas got for essentially Salas and Waller, with Turner and Savicki Jr. being kind of just, warm bodies that move the other way, they got Ron Wilson, who's 35 at this point, is a lefty, and he's been a good reliever for Carolina for quite a few years. He's got a 83 career FIP minus. He is, at the time of the trade, was rated 9.77 with a great split against lefties. Sinker slider pitcher, can handle righties okay. And he's making $1.8 million, and then he's a free agent. So this is, I like this a lot better than Vegas's earlier desperation move for relief pickup. This is a nice, solid guy to add to their pen. As far as the way this trade looks, it's good both ways. Carolina was going to have a tough time getting anything for an aging reliever with 1 year left on the contract, and they got something for him. Waller looks like he'll be usable, and Salas will at least be a fun prospect to watch, and he could end up being an okay piece. Although again, 17-year-olds, you have no idea what they're going to be. He probably will top out as a quad A player. Vegas doesn't really give up too much, moves a couple contracts they don't want to have anymore, and gets a reliever they need. So this is a good move both ways. As far as grades for this, I gave Vegas for the talent, I gave him a B. I think that's kind of what Wilson is. Maybe he could be a B+, but I kind of gave him a B, given the fact that he's older, and he had seemed to slow a little bit in recent years. Organizationally, it's an A. And it's just this is the kind of move you make, and this is the kind of move that keeps you competitive. Carolina, I gave a C- for talent. It's just, and again, remember, we were talking about this. This isn't like they got hosed in the talent department. That's not what that grade means. It means the players they picked up were C- players. Waller's a questionable middle reliever who probably is okay, and Salas is a dream at this point, and that's what that C- means. The other guys, Turner and Savicki, really don't count, and they're not any better than C- or D+ themselves. Organizationally, though, I gave him an A because they got something for Wilson, who was going to walk at the end of the year, and they weren't going to want to give him a lot of money given he's older and his ratings were kind of looking like they're going to go. So, again, this is a good move both ways. The next trade we're going to take a look at is Montreal-Seattle. This was done on July 1st, and in this deal, Montreal acquired Juan Cruz and Raul Lucero, which they did by selling Craig Browning to Seattle. Let's look at Seattle first. Craig Browning, he's kind of a known quantity. He's a 31-year-old right-handed pitcher, 7.87 ratings. He's got a fastball, a curveball, a change, and a fork. And he's got a slightly negative versus left split, but it's not terribly bad. So it's not one of those ones where you worry about him being able to get them out. He's been used primarily as a reliever throughout his career, which is kind of interesting at 31, a guy who looks like someone who could start and never really had a shot. As a reliever, his FIP minus for his career is 74, which is pretty darn. Or I'm sorry, that's quite off. It's in the mid 80s. There's one bad year in there. I'm looking at this wrong, but he's posted a 74, a 129 in a bad year, then 84, 84, 70. So he's been a reliable reliever. And the question is, and I think this is what Seattle's looking at, is can he start? He's got an expiring $1.4 million contract, and if you can plug this guy into a starter role, he's got 5 stamina, he's got 4 pitches. The fastball's the only kind of plus pitch, but the curveball's acceptable, and the forkball's an okay pitch. And if he can start, that's a nice pickup, and that's kind of what they were looking to do, I think, when they picked him up. In return, Montreal got Juan Cruz. He's a 35-year-old righty. He's currently 6'6" or 6'7" for his ratings, but that 7 used to be an 8, and his stuff kind of did touch up around 7 at one point. He's a 6-pitch guy. He's got fastball, slider, curve, splitter, fork, knuckle curve. He's got a little bit of a minus on his lefty split. And interestingly, he's really been kind of a sick stuff most of his career, and it's amazing he lasted so long. And he's kind of the interesting thing about him, the only reason I'm even talking about him so much, is that he's shows you what movement can do for a guy with a lot of pitches. He's got a lot of pitches, he's got okay control, but at one point his movement was kind of pushing 8, and was briefly at, I believe, at one point. And that's how he stuck around in this league, despite not having stuff. And I think we kind of underrate what that can do for you at times. The other interesting thing was all those pitches. Some of these guys relief convert really well. Now, I posted a while back about Martin Sempa because somebody asked about a relief conversion from him. And honestly, when you have a lot of 6s and 5s, sometimes the numbers there aren't enough that when you add up all those stats and convert a guy, it doesn't do very well. So maybe Juan Cruz wouldn't work, but I do find it curious that nobody ever really tried with him. The other player, and Juan Cruz was not anything useful to get back in this deal. I think it was just kind of a body part that moved. The other player that Montreal got, probably the reason they made this trade, was catcher Raul Lucero. Lucero's a 19-year-old catching prospect. He's a righty batter. He is 5 contact, 5 gap, 8 power, 7 eye, 6 avoid Ks. This is his talents. Now, he's quite a bit away from those, although catchers often lag a little bit behind development. He's got a 6 arm and 6 ability behind the plate, so while he'll never be awesome at the catching position, he's acceptable there. But he's still pretty raw, and he's got a ways to go. The other thing about him is he's bumped before, and I don't know if that's something that Montreal likes to look at. Sometimes I do. It used to be more prevalent in previous editions of OOTP. It's not that great in this one as a predictor, but there are some just, and it might just be like a confirmation bias sort of thing, but those guys that have bumped before, you kind of look at them and go, well, if they bump again, man, they could be really good. And that's what Lucero is. Right now he looks like a backup catcher and a decent one, but if he bumps again, he's a starter. And he's a nice pickup. Again, I thought this was a good trade for both teams. Montreal didn't need Browning. They had tons of pitching, tons of relief, and they flipped him for a prospect in Lucero. That's a reasonable return on a guy like Browning. I thought this was even a better move for Seattle, simply because, and we commented about this in the last episode, they had a bad starting pitching situation, and as we've seen, they got lucky with a couple of younger guys. I wouldn't say lucky, maybe. Ramos and Contreras are both quite good pitchers, but consistency at a young age maybe doesn't always happen. But they did this. They've done a lot of work, and we'll see another trade later, just shoring up their staff, adding depth starting that really, I think, helped them maintain their winning ways after a hot start. And I think they did intend to try start Browning, and that's a smart move. I mean, you got a guy who's got a, 20% better than league averages as a reliever, which is what that 80% FIP minus is trying to say. And if he can start, if he's got the pitches and the endurance to start, there's a pretty good reason to believe that guy can be a league average starter. And league average starters have value. If you can put up a low 4s ERA, you've got a job. And so grades for here, for Montreal, for talent, I gave him a C, because that's what Lucero is. He's kind of a C prospect. An interesting one, but still a C. Organizationally, they get an A, because anytime you move something you don't need and you get value for it, that's a great move. Then Seattle, again, I gave him kind of a C plus B minus for Browning. And maybe a little more towards C plus than B minus, but still. Or organizationally A. Again, Lucero's not going to make or break them, and this was the time to make this move, and a good time when they're trying to win and they need pitching help. So, way to find the part that you need. So that's 2 trades down. We're going to try to get through about 8 of them, 8 or 9 here today, and hopefully we're getting a little bit more into the player's move than I think last time when we were just kind of trying to blow through. I think I did 13 or 14 trades last time, and it just got to the point where it felt like we weren't touching on much of anything. The next one is July 11th, Des Moines-Jacksonville trade. This one's a little bit different. I think this is the part of the season where Jacksonville still didn't really believe that they could maintain a winning record, so they were kind of trying to move older parts for younger parts, which is not a bad idea if you don't believe winning. And they ended up making the playoffs anyway, so clearly they were doing something right. Des Moines, on the other hand, has some good young bats, and had a decent offense for the first time in a long time, and some starters, but they needed some pitching depth, and I think that's kind of what prompted this trade. So Des Moines got Angel Ramirez, who's at this point a 36-year-old left-handed pitcher with 6.87 ratings. He's got a fastball, change, forkball with no split, and he's been a good, solid starter for a long time in the Brewster. He's kind of near the end of his career. He's lost a little bit of his velocity, a little bit of his luster, but as an extreme ground ball pitcher, they can survive that a little bit. He is kind of expensive. I mean, he's making $9.5 million this year, $9.5 million next year, and you never know when the arm's just going to fall off these guys. So that contract next year could hurt, because he's kind of a 3 to 4 starter right now, and that's kind of pricey for that, but it's not terrible. Des Moines also got Julio Negrete, who's a 23-year-old right-handed pitcher with 7.68 potentials. He's currently only 7.67 out of those. He's a fastball, curveball, changeup, forkball guy. And he's 23, and when you start seeing when guys start to get to that age and they haven't realized all their potential, I just start to wonder if they're going to get there. And he just kind of looks like a quad A guy, frankly. He's never played in the majors, so it's possible that he could be an acceptable relief pitcher. And I honestly, his pitches are 6 fastball, 7 curveball, 8 changeup, 7 fork. And I suppose if you kept the fastball change, you might get enough of a bump out of those 2 other pitches with the relief conversion to do something with him. He has 10 stamina, but that's not going to help his movement. He's always going to be, he's a fly ball pitcher. He only gets 49% ground ball, so he'll always be a little bit homer prone. And that's what I think is going to keep him from being successful in the Brewster. I could be wrong, but he's not terrible, but I think he's just not quite good enough. In return for those 2 guys, Jacksonville received Vyacheslav Vasilyev, who's 26, and he's kind of got a few warts of his own. He's a 26-year-old righty. He's got potentials of 8.87, which should make him a good number 3. He's only 7.87 out of that because he stalled the development of his slider and his change. So really, he's a 2-pitch guy with a fastball, curveball at this point. Both those fastball and curveballs are solid. They're both 8s. They're kind of plus pitches. They do make him have a little bit of a negative split on lefties. And he's been abysmal for Des Moines. They've been pitching him as a starter for years, the 6 ERA and a 5 FIP. His contract is, and he's got a $1 million deal this year. He's ARBA eligible, so he's not expensive. He does have upside still, but again, he's 26. Is he ever going to get there? Tyler made the point when he acquired him that this is a guy that either he could RP convert, or he could just use as a swingman and use his reliever if his other pitches don't develop, and he probably plays up a little bit. And he's got a point there. So it's not like he's useless if he doesn't develop. He's just one of those guys you had hopes for, and he may not turn out to be what you'd like him to be. The other player they got is Wendell Clark, who, similarly has some warts. He's a third base slash DH. He's a 19-year-old left-handed bat. He tops out at ratings of 7 contact, 6 gap with 8 speed, so that gap could be useful. 6 power, 4 I, 5 avoid K. And if he could play third base in a league where our third base situation is not very good, that's good enough to be a decent, solid player there that you're happy to play. The problem is that he's just a klutz at third. He's got a 5 error rating, which, despite his great arm and acceptable range at third, just probably keeps him from being a defender that you want in that spot. And that makes him kind of a DH because he can't really play anywhere else. And those aren't ratings you want out of a DH. I mean, the contact's there. He's got okay power, but he doesn't walk. And he would be a subpar DH. So it really, his big thing is, can he play third? If he can play third, great. If he can't, he's not that useful. I like this move by Des Moines. This is a nice, aggressive move to say, hey, we're good now. We've got offense. We've got some holes in our staff. Let's pick up a pitcher. Ramirez is a known quantity, and they replaced one of the worst pitchers in their rotation with him. So that's a great move in terms of an upgrade. Clark's got some warts. They were just done with Vyacheslav at this point. So they really didn't, in their mind, give up much of anything. Negrete, I'm not sure is much to help them in terms, but Ramirez is a nice piece. I think this is kind of a gamble for Jacksonville. They didn't truly believe they were going to be tremendously competitive at this point, and they do get out of a contract that's a little frightening next year, or I guess this year now that we're into 2030. But both the guys they got are kind of question marks. Again, Vasilyev does have some use as a reliever, so it's not like they lost out here. I do wonder about Clark. So the grades for this one, Des Moines, I gave him kind of a C+, B- for talent. Ramirez used to definitely be like a B, B-, but he's fallen off a little bit. Still very serviceable. Organizationally, I gave him a B+. Mostly because I'm not sure that you had to pay Clark too. Not that he's the greatest thing in the world to lose, but maybe you did because they're trying to convince Jacksonville seemed more excited about Vyacheslav Vasilyev than I would have been. So I don't know if Clark was the make or break in this deal or not. But still, I mean, organizationally, you give him a B+. It's a solid move. Maybe not all-star level, but solid. Jacksonville, I gave him I called this players combined kind of a C+. They're both kind of question marks to me. And then organizationally, a B- because I think maybe that's not entirely fair. Maybe this is more of a B because they did. It's not like Ramirez is something amazing, and they did get out of a bad contract. So this is kind of a hard deal to grade. Okay for both teams. Good for Des Moines. Probably good for Jacksonville, but just maybe kind of a lateral move too. It's not entirely clear. The next one, again, involves Des Moines, and Des Moines just continued to kind of, similarly to Seattle, they just needed some pitching help, and they just kind of kept making nice little moves to get some more help that way. And this is a Hawaii Des Moines deal. Hawaii had sold most of its talent, or much early in the season, but they still had a few pieces sitting around. And what they did is they sold their longtime closer, not long time, but at least for the last few seasons, closer Carlos Sanchez to Hawaii. To Des Moines. And so Des Moines picks up Carlos Sanchez, who's a 30-year-old lefty with 8.78 ratings, but a huge split against lefties due to his slider primarily, and that cutter that lets him pitch against righties. He's also kind of a high-endurance reliever with a stamina of 7, which does seem to kind of help a little bit compared to some of the guys with 1s or 2s at times. Both his slider and his cutter are plus pitches. He's been used as a closer by Hawaii, and we can argue as much as we want about the closer being the most important spot, but if we're just going to go traditionally talk about it, I don't really know, like the traditional idea of a closer is the best guy in your staff, which may or may not be right. I'm not sure he is that good. He's not kind of the lights out guy you want. He's still pretty darn good. But the flaw with him is that he's expensive. He's making 7.5 this year, 8 the next, 9.5 the year after that, 10 the year after that, and then 2033 has $11 million team option, which I imagine he'll never get. But that has him pitching up to about 34, 35 which at pretty pricey values for a guy who I would call more of a setup guy and using traditional roles, and who's older. So there is some risk with this contract. But still, this is Des Moines needed some help in the back end, and this is a player that will help them out. To get Sanchez, they gave up a couple players. They gave up Lawrence Stokes, who's a 21-year-old righty with 9.67 ratings. He's got a cutter curveball combo. He's got, and he's actually kind of an odd righty, and it's probably due to the fact that his cutter's so good that he has a positive split against lefties. That actually helps his movement out. And instead of having a 6 movement against lefties, he has a 7, which may make him work. You wonder with this 6 movement against righties, he'd be homer prone, but at least the guy's the big, at least his plus on his split is going to be against some of the better bats in the league. I think he looks like a solid middle relief type and could play up into kind of, in a good year, play up into kind of somebody you'd want in high leverage situations. But he's a decent player. The other player Hawaii got, and he's 21 and he's developed. So it's not like you're taking any risk on wondering what's going to happen to this guy. He doesn't have much track record, but that's okay. You don't always know exactly what you're getting, but he looks pretty solid. The other pitcher Hawaii got is 27-year-old righty Antonio Cardenas. He really is kind of a quad A guy, frankly. He's got 9.57 ratings, cutter, curveball, slider, changeup. The problem is he just doesn't have the motion. I think it was higher at one point, but still it just doesn't have the motion to pitch at the major league level. He's just going to give up homers. And this is actually kind of one of the problems I have with OTP's pitch model. The guy's got 9 rated stuff, whatever that means, right? He's got a 10 changeup, an 8 curveball, a 6 slider, and a 6 cutter. And they're saying that gives him 9 stuff, whatever that means. How can your stuff be very, very good with a rating of 9 if it doesn't move? How do you have a 10 changeup that doesn't move, apparently, and a slider that doesn't move, and a curveball that doesn't, it just doesn't, it's a kind of a goofy model. I'm just kind of nitpicking at this point, I suppose, but he doesn't really matter. So when we look at this deal, Des Moines continues to shore up their staff. They didn't really give up much for it. So I'd say it's a decent move in terms of what they gave up in terms of talent. Sanchez's contract scares me a little bit. I think it's kind of one of those ones you look at and you go, that's going to get ugly on the back end. And it's a good move by Hawaii. They got something for a player that they got out of a contract that wasn't going to help them. They're in a rebuild mode. They have no reason to even risk giving Sanchez money. And I think Stokes will be a decent player. So Hawaii, I kind of gave him talent to C+ because, solid middle reliever. That's about what you get for that. And organizationally, this is an A. Des Moines, I gave him talent-wise, I gave him a B+ because that's about what Sanchez is right now. But I organizationally gave him a B- just for taking on the risk. We kind of continue to fly through these, so hopefully you're not getting too tired of listening to me talk yet. The next one we're going to look at is this will be pretty quick, little July 21st, Vegas and Long Beach made a deal, and essentially Long Beach has kind of had a revolving door at first base this year. They just couldn't pick somebody up and get them to stay healthy. So they made him, and Vegas had Roberto Perez, who's a 25-year-old lefty that's got 6.7 ratings. Although his contact's a little better against right-handed pitching. Solid defense, no speed. And he's a guy that probably should have gotten a shot somewhere. Those are the kind of ratings, 7 contact, 6 power, 7 gap, 6 eye. Like with no speed, that can play good some years against right-handed pitching if it's for a lefty bat, and sometimes it doesn't do much of anything at all. But he probably deserves a shot, and there was no way he was going to crack Vegas's lineup. Long Beach needed a player. He's a warm body to stick in at first, and could conceivably hit okay acceptably, and sometimes even better than that. It's that's that range where you never really know what you're going to get out of the player. Vegas in return got kind of a warty player of their own. They got Antonio Cruz, who's a 17-year-old kind of second baseman, left fielding, right-handed bat, which just already starts to sound kind of weird. But first off, the most important thing, he's 17, right? So who knows what this guy's going to be. the two positions he looks like he could possibly grow into right now, given his kind of good infield range, not great arm. He's going to have to work on his hands, but that is in is second base. And some of these 17-year-olds will get a couple, defensive fundamental bumps as they age. And then he's got 7 range, 5 errors, 5 arm in the outfield. And to me, that looks like a left fielder. I don't think you can really improve enough to turn that into a center fielder. And he doesn't have the arm for right. What he does have is a pretty good gap power hitting tool at 9, and he's got speed, so he can utilize that gap power hitting tool. And he's got marginal contact for a righty at 6, solid power with 6. His eye is 5. His avoid K is a solid at 7. So the problem with him is if he develops exactly as he's currently rated now, he's an below average second baseman, probably can get up to an average second baseman with development, and a decent left fielder. And that's not a bat that can play in left field successfully. It could play at second, but he's not a great defender there. Now, if he bumps, he's got a good set of fundamentals, and this is the kind of player that if he bumps, say he gets that, gets 1 point for power, contact, and eye, which we see all the time, well, then he's looking like a pretty decent player. And if he bumps there, he'll probably raise his defensive fundamentals. They do, for whatever reason, players seem to improve in more than one spot. So the guy's got some upside, but more than likely he ends up kind of being a quad A type if he develops or less. Because if you asked Stever, for example, he'd be like, well, this guy's got a 99.7% chance of lumping into nothing and like a 0.0001% chance of bumping, and and otherwise not turning much into anything. Overall, again, this is just a decent trade. Good job by both guys. It's not really exciting, but it's good. For Vegas, I gave him a C on the talent. Maybe this should be more of a C minus. I'll probably fix that. Organizationally, I gave him an A. I mean, they got something for Roberto Perez, which 25-year-old lefty with mediocre. That's getting something for that. It's a nice move. Long Beach kind of gave him a C minus because. I wonder if I reversed those when I did this. I would call him more of a, well, no, he's kind of a C minus. Then organizationally, I gave him kind of a B plus. They didn't give up much. They filled a hole. On the other hand, they didn't fill it very well, or at least not excitingly. And we're ignoring the fact that I now know that player worked out okay. So, what do I know, right? I spent a lot more time talking about that one than I thought I would. It's kind of sorry. We only have a few left to go though, so we're almost done with this edition. Next deal is just another example of Louisville getting one of their players back, because the genius just loves to lose people in free agency or trade them away and then reacquire them. And interestingly, the other guy involved in this. Allen seems to start doing the same sort of thing too all the time, which is, I feel like I've seen several trades between these guys now where they're just trading their old players back to each other. This also happened on July 21st. Louisville is part of kind of the build-up for a nice playoff run. Picked up reliever Alan Dominguez. He's a 31-year-old right-handed pitcher who had previously played in Louisville with 10.78 ratings, just good, solid closer stuff. He's got a plus change and a plus cutter. Helps him out versus lefties. He's a 90% ground ball getter. Strangely enough, but I think it's because Brooklyn had some bad defenses when he was there, and then Louisville was rebuilding when he was in Louisville. His ERA is only 3.7 for his career, but his FIP for his career is 3.14, and he's got a 75% or 75 FIP minus, which is good marks for a reliever. And that's more in line with what you would expect his ratings. And he's only making $2.9 million, which is a pretty solid price for a good reliever, and he's RV eligible one more year. So nice pickup for Louisville. To get that, they gave up kind of a little bit of two not really big deal players, and then the reason we'll get to that I'm now unable to use words. I'm just going to mutter and say random things. We'll get there. Anyway, Brooklyn got, less excitingly, first baseman DH Bernardo Perez, 32-year-old right-handed batter. And maybe some of us remember back in 2027 when he just just lit the world on fire. He had 268, 342, slugged 604 with 56 home runs. The year before that, in 2026, he slugged 678 and had an okay on-base percentage at 328. So there was a while there when it looked like, hey, maybe this is going to be one of those guys, despite that 5 contact, that 10 power and 7 iron is going to carry him. But he's kind of stunk up the joint since then. The home run rate's still pretty good, but his on-base percentages are so bad that you can't really put him in the lineup consistently. He is an acceptable defender at first. Tony Moreau is a 32-year-old right-handed pitcher. He is 10.65. He's kind of been a 4.16 career ERA guy with a FIP that's in about the same range. He's another guy. Like, how do you have a plus fastball and a plus knuckle curve and mediocre movement? Just explain that to me, OTP. It doesn't make any sense. But he is the guy that's going back to Brooklyn that had been there before, and he's been okay in Brooklyn previously. He's the kind of guy you don't want to give a lot of money, but he's not making a lot. He's on a 1-year, $1.1 million deal. He is an acceptable middle reliever. You're never going to want him in there in a close game, but he can mop up some innings for you at a non-horrible rate. He's not going to blow it every single time. The reason Brooklyn makes this deal is Ace Rodriguez. Or Julian Rodriguez, 24-year-old lefty corner outfielder. He is essentially a speedy slap hitter. He's got 8 contacts, sit gap power, no real power. His eye's a little underdeveloped at 24. You wonder if he's ever going to reach that 6. He's currently at 4, and he doesn't strike out much. He's fast. He steals base as well. He is 6 range, 8 errors, 9 defense. So kind of your prototypical right fielder, but can play some left as well. And the reason Louisville moves him is he's blocked in Louisville. You got Barrett, you got Braddock, you got Marino, you got Sandcastle in center, and this guy just doesn't really have a place to play. This type of player also, I wonder if Brooklyn's looking at this fondly because of the success they've had with another slap hitter and Holden Blackwell and thinking this will play out for him well in their park. I don't know if that played a role. But he's a nice player. The other thing about him is he's 24 and he still has 5 or 6 years of team control left, which means he will be cheap throughout his prime. I honestly think this is a slight overpay on Louisville's part. They wanted the bullpen help, and they got good bullpen help, and they got well-priced bullpen help that's not a rental. I just think that Rodriguez is a little bit better player than what they should have paid for a reliever, but not by much. And I get that they didn't need him, that he's a surplus part. And this is one of those times where, sometimes an overpay is okay. For grades here, I gave Brooklyn, for talent, I'd call Rodriguez kind of a B. I gave him an A for this. They were kind of in a meh ho-hum season, and so they traded a reliever and got someone who should start for them for years, which is, maybe that should be an A+. Louisville, Dominguez, I'd call a B+ reliever, but I gave him kind of an organizational B- just in the fact that I think this is a little bit of an overpay. It's not atrocious. It's just not, I don't know. Maybe we're wanting too many things to be absolutely perfect. Next up's the Salazar deal. This is Madison Long Beach, and we don't really need to talk much about Long Beach receiving Alfredo Salazar. We all know exactly what he is. He's one of the premier bats in the league. He was slated to play center field for them and did, and that's not really his best position. But there are corner outfielders that are athletic, so that's a good move on Lane's part, knowing that he could get away with that. And Salazar's outplayed his ratings a little bit in center throughout his career, so he's not horrible there. It's just not as strong for him. In return for one of the hardest players to trade and one of the best players in the league, Salazar, who is a rental, and if anybody asked, you knew that he was asking for $80 to $90 million next year, so it made what you're going to give up for him significantly less. Madison got some okay players. Victor Hurtado is a 22-year-old right-handed pitcher who tops out at 7.77 ratings, and it'll probably get there. He's very close. He's got a plus fastball, but that's about it. He has 4 other pitches that are just kind of meh: curveball, slider, change, forkball. And if you can mix those up well enough, he may have some success. He only has 4 stamina, which, you'd like him to have a little bit more if he's going to be kind of a junk baller guy. And it kind of rules out the RP conversion too. And I don't know if I haven't checked, but I don't know if he'll play up if you just set him in a position of a reliever, because a lot of times these guys with a bunch of mediocre pitches, they don't get any kind of a boost when you set them up to throw with max effort, just because the pitches aren't there to start with. But the way he looks now, he could be an okay 5th starter. He kind of needs a second pitch, but he could play okay as a 5th starter. The second pitcher they got is, I think it's Xiao-Chi is how you say that, I believe. Xiao-Chi, maybe? Tio. I know how to say Tio. But he's a 17-year-old right-handed pitcher who, again, only 4 stamina. But he's got a good, solid fastball, slider, plus curveball. Those should end up giving him a minus split against lefties. And as a starter, it looks like he's kind of a 7-7-8 guy. He is 17 and throwing 90 to 92, so if you get some velocity bumps in there, he could be a good deal better. Now he looks like a 4th, 5th starter, but again, he's 17, so you really don't know. He's not horribly developed for a 17-year-old either, so he's a nice prospect. He's not a great one. The other player that Madison got back, I initially looked at kind of the salary dump only, and I don't know how they looked at it, but that's Mike Love. And Love was hurt. Part of the reason that Long Beach was wanting to make this deal in the first place. He's owed $6.9 million this year, and then has a team option for $6.9 next year, which normally you look at that and you say, okay, salary dump. But Love is still extremely popular. And that might have been one of the strong reasons to actually put him in the move, is that you traded Salazar, and your fans are gonna be pissed. And those stupid OOTP fans that just love guys who used to be good still love Mike Love, and that's a smart thing to add in there. While we're talking about him, I've been watching him for years, and I just don't understand Mike Love, like how he continues to be a productive bat. And I think this is teaching us a little bit more about the combination of I and avoid K rating. And he is excellent in both of them. He's a right-handed batter with 6 contact since about 2023. And the 4 or 5 years after 2023 is a right-handed batter with 6 contact and mediocre speed. He hit 270 to 290, which just doesn't. You won't find too many 6 contact righties that are going to do that consistently. And I do wonder if it's avoid KI combo that made him able to do that. And honestly, he hit okay last year with 5 contacts. So I'm not sure it's not a terrible idea for Madison to pick that option up just for the popularity boost alone. He's not making that much. This is. I just feel bad for Wilson. He's been trying to retool and move guys for a couple years now. This reminds me of the Grant deal that we talked about earlier, where the return he's getting for the players he's selling is just not that great. And I can't, you don't want to rake him over the coals for it, because it's not like he hasn't been trying. It's not like this was made spur of the moment. He's been trying to move these guys for a long time. And what do you do when, you're trying to trade a guy and owners ask you, by the way, what's he asking for an extension? Like, oh, just $90 million for 1 year. Just that. So, yeah, I mean, he just ended up in a bad situation. This is a great deal for Long Beach. They had one of the best players in the league, and the piece that's going to put them over the top. So Salazar is a talent. He's an A. Organizationally, this is an A. And there's not a single one of us that wouldn't give up those players for Salazar in a heartbeat. For Madison, I gave him kind of a C+, B- on the talent. And organizationally, I got him a C+, B-. I don't want to hate on him that much. And they got something for Alfredo, which, they've been shopping him for years now, and they just were unable to get what they wanted. So, again, I think they just really got backed into a corner, and sometimes you just come out the loser no matter what you do. Couple more to go. Only one real trade, and then we're almost done. Also on July 21st, Seattle and Vancouver made a deal, and this is kind of continuing. I mentioned earlier that Seattle had been doing some work shoring up their pitching staff, and here they pick up Chester Kipling, 32-year-old right-handed pitcher, 7.78 ratings, the plus fastball, curveball, changeup. He's got a little bit of a minus split on lefties, but not bad. He's had ups and downs over his career, but overall, he's been kind of a league average starter, and again, that has value. You know, if you've got the guys at the front of your rotation you can hit, put those guys with 4.5 ERAs, 4.2 ERAs in the back of your rotation. They'll be just fine. He's low risk. He's got an expiring contract. He's cheap. Vancouver, on the other hand, has a billion of these guys. Brett's ability to hoard third, fourth, fifth starters and middle relievers and develop them and just have tons of them at all times is fairly impressive. In return for Kipling, who they didn't need at all, they got pitcher Bob Murray as a 21-year-old righty who tops out at 7.67. He's almost there. He's a fastball curve with a plus circle change. And honestly, to me, he kind of looks like a quad A guy. Maybe in a relief role, that stuff could go up to 8, but he's still a 6-motion righty, which could be okay in Vancouver. So Vancouver could get some use out of him, but I think on a lot of teams he's a quad A guy. Then there is Hazmet Karabekir, who I don't even know. Oh, what is it? It says Hazmet there, but I think it might be Hafmet. Anyway, I don't know how you pronounce that letter. He's German. He's got a great name, and that's the only reason I know that he even was on a team at all, because he just has no business being in the league. He's a 5'6", 33-year-old righty who's a former EBA guy and shouldn't be playing. But again, great name. And they also got center fielder Jorge Marquez, who has a tremendous range in center field, and very fast. 10 in center field, 10 speed, 10 stealing ability. He can bunt for hit at a 7. I don't know if that'll help him out at all. But he doesn't have really hitting ratings. He's 21 years old, which makes him unlikely to get much better. And at 21, he's 5'5", 3.46, which might not even be good enough to hit at AAA. Although his glove might carry him there. Overall, again, Seattle did a great. They're not usually an in-season trading team, and they did a very good job here fixing the back end of their rotation, adding relievers, and they did this for essentially no cost. I'm not entirely sold on the move for Vancouver. I don't know what to say about this for Vancouver, because Vancouver didn't need Kipling. And so it's not like they had to get anything for him, and you're not going to get much for Chester Kipling. He's a back-end starter. He's older. But they didn't get much. Bob Murray is the only one of those guys that might be able to play, and he's kind of a question mark. And again, at 21, he's probably not going to suddenly get a whole heck of a lot better. Grades for this, I gave Seattle. I gave him a C+ for talent, and then an A for organizational. Lots of high organizational grades in this review so far. Really good, solid moves by a lot of teams. I feel like recently there have been some head scratchers, but overall this has been pretty good. Vancouver for talent, I gave him a C-. It might be a D+, frankly, if Murray can't hack it. And then for organizational, I kind of gave him a B- because I really didn't know what to give him. I can't call it a bad move. Can't really call it a good one. It's just kind of it's a move. There's one more deal to briefly touch on before we wrap this one up, and that's a trade I made with Jacksonville. Essentially, Martin Nunez is a 27-year-old lefty pitcher with 5.98 ratings against lefties. He's got a 6 fastball and I think a 5 curveball, or a change or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But he's 27. He'd been kind of up and down in AAA for a while, and I never had a spot to play him in the bigs. And I always wondered if he could be a lefty specialist. So I was looking for a team that was like, hey, anybody want to try this guy out as a lefty specialist? And Jacksonville said sure. I didn't get anything for it. And then Jacksonville actually used him as a middle reliever rather than a specialist, and he got hammered, which isn't too surprising. I still think there's a chance with that huge motion that he could have a role, maybe. I don't know. But it was worth it for me to see if it moved. I didn't give myself grades for this one. I don't know how you would grade this. It kind of put not applicables. And then I was going to lose the guy anyway, so it's not like it hurt my organizational depth at all. And then Jacksonville talent's a D-. And then organizational, I gave him a B, just for stepping up. Someone said, hey, free player might work, and they jumped on it. And that's what you're supposed to do when that happens, if you can fit him into your system. Anyway, that is it for this time around. So we're pushing about 50 minutes now, which is a long time for you to be listening to me talk to myself. Sorry for that. We're going to get another one of these pretty soon here in a couple of days. Me and Tyler will be coming back to discuss a bunch of moves he made. And then there were some big moves earlier this year that I would really like to get some league-wide opinion on. So I'm hoping to do something this weekend. I would love to have any of you there for it. I would want you to look at 1 or 2 or 3 trades ahead of time, maybe 20, 30 minutes of prep work, and it'll probably take us about an hour to record it, which I know is a little bit of a time commitment. And if you can't stick around that long, we can always just do the trade you're interested in and leave. And then you can leave and I can finish up. But like I said, I'd like to have somebody around for this because I think there's some good moves worth discussing that are a little bit more depth than just me talking to myself here while you listen. Anyway, I hope you had fun with this edition. As always, there'll be timestamps so you can skip to the one you're interested in if you're interested in any of them. And I hope you had fun listening, and thanks.